And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wang has the day off. He'll be back with us on Monday when he's returned back to the state of California from vacation. And my guess is he's going to get in his car. He's going to fight traffic. He's going to pull up to the radio station parking lot, get out of his car, take out his security badge, open up the door, walk down the hall, sit in the studio, and say to himself, Jesus, I wish I was still on vacation. But anyway, he'll be back on Monday at noon. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the author of the book, Liberal Misery, How the Hateful Left Sucks Joy Out of Everything and Everyone. Gee, I wonder what that book's about. Available online at Amazon.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Scarry. Eddie Scarry, welcome.
Hello, John. Happy to be with you.
Hello. Thanks so much for stopping by on this Friday. So, of course, the big news nationally is that President Trump was indicted for a second time, this time in Washington, D.C. And it's funny because you see two stories that have nothing to do with one another, and you make a mental connection in your head. I was watching a news report on this particular situation, and then they split away and they did something about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And he, of course, is out promoting his book, Spare. Spare because William is going to be the king and Prince Harry is now irrelevant outside of the tabloids. And I said to myself, that's kind of what this indictment is. This is the Spare. Because we know that Trump has been indicted in Florida. That trial will go in front of a Florida jury. I don't think you're going to get a unanimous verdict in that trial. I think it's going to be either an acquittal or a hung jury, just given the makeup of where this is going to happen. And I'm saying to myself, they're so aggressively trying to get Donald Trump on something that this is the spare. This is the backup. Let's go ahead and bring him up on charges in a place where 90+% of the jury pool are registered Democrats who hate his guts. And it doesn't matter what you say at the trial. There's no even need for a trial. The outcome is predetermined. This is the backup plan. This is the spare in case Florida goes sideways for them. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I don't know that, how would I say this? I honestly believe that the point isn't necessarily the conviction. The conviction is the cherry on top in any one of these, or all of them, or even none of them. The point is, one, to satisfy all the Democrats who are still ticked off, who will never get over 2016. I mean, we relived 2016 every single day, right up until, well, I mean, that's what kind of impeachment was about, impeachment 1.0, Trump impeachment 1.0. It was just about undoing 2016. These people will never, ever forgive the country, the voters, for what happened in 2016, which is the election of Donald Trump. Even I think they probably resent the very nomination, the idea that he could even get and that he could even register in the polls. There is just such a lasting resentment. So I think the convictions, I don't believe that they honestly have thought that far ahead. I really believe, because if you and I say that because I have tried to logically think through any one of these things, from every single angle I possibly can. And I always come up with, my answer always is the juice even worth the squeeze? Because it's really not. You're looking at a justice system that all the time, they use their discretion to not charge people for all sorts of things, the least of which is, having classified documents, an ex-president having classified documents, falsifying, what is it, basically a campaign finance, basically breaking a campaign or skirting the campaign finance laws. These are such minor issues in the grand scheme of things because what has been the consequence over and over again inflaming the political tensions and passions of this country. And do we really need that? That sounds like the last thing that we would need, and yet they do it anyway. And this is from I don't credit Democrats ever with ever having expressed the Democratic Party in general. I don't in any way feel like that there was let's turn the page, let's move on past Trump, let's bring the country together. No, I always knew, and that's why I wrote the book Liberal Misery, and also why before the 2020 election I wrote the book Grow Up and Vote for Trump, which was aimed at independents who were, they were just tired of Trump. They didn't like the tweets. They didn't like what they perceived to be constant chaos, which was actually manufactured by the media every single day for 4 years, really 5 years. You may not like all that stuff, but trust me, after the election, it's only going to get worse. Once the people who are trying to get power, once they get their hands on it, it is going to be just a vindictive party, a party of revenge, vindictive. That was going to be the thing every single day after 2020 if Trump didn't win that election. And what have we seen? It has been exactly that. So, if only they get to intimidate and harass the president and more importantly, all of his supporters and show them who's in charge, that's the point. I don't know that really they've thought through, any of them have thought through it to the point like, oh, we really need to get a conviction. The whole point is the process. The process is the point, the harassment, just letting them, flexing their muscles every single day.
Let's assume for a second that they convict Trump on something, especially in the Washington, D.C. Trial. Politically, how do you think that will play among Republicans? And I say that because the only thing I can think of that's been even kind of similar to this that's happened before happened to a congressman by the name of Adam Clayton Powell. Adam Clayton Powell represented Harlem in the United States Congress and the House of Representatives for a long time. He was extremely popular in his district, and the feds targeted him. The feds went after him, and he fled the country. I think he was in like the Bahamas or someplace like that. But he continued to fill out the paperwork. He continued to run for Congress, and he won re-election to his seat in the House of Representatives while not even being in the country, because if he showed back up to the country, he would have been arrested and thrown in jail. So he ran for re-election from the Bahamas and won, even though the feds thought he was a crook and regarded him as a criminal and went after him. His constituents didn't care, and they continued to vote for him, and they re-elected him. Do you think Trump, if convicted of one of these counts, could keep his coalition together and theoretically win the election?
It's an interesting question. I didn't know all that background, so thank you for sharing that. But it's that in itself, those scenarios. I know there's been jokes I've seen on social media where people say, "Oh, won't it be a total bad move for Trump if he goes to prison, but he gets elected anyway, and he's our president from prison, or he goes into prison, he's got the Secret Service with him," because I just read an article that he actually is still entitled to have the Secret Service in the event that he were to go to prison. It's just a difficult scenario for me to see, and I think that his campaign, at least the all indications are that, not his campaign, his legal team, that they believe they can stall this and get a judge on their side to stall this until after the election for obvious reasons, for the very scenarios that you're putting forth. I myself, I can't tell you what happens in the event that he is convicted and there's still he's the nominee, or he was still the front runner for the nomination. It just and again, I would say that even the people who, and I guess this is part of their veneer, well, this is just the justice system, this is just law and order, we're not taking that into consideration whatsoever, which is such BS. They do it all the time. If this were a real standard where, oh, well, there's just one legal system and nobody's above the law, Hillary Clinton, and I hate to talk about Hillary Clinton still, she would have been in prison. She destroyed government property of the taxpayer, mind you. I always stress this in conversations with people that when she deleted the emails, all of those emails, that belongs to the public. At any point in time, we're supposed to be able to fill out a FOIA request, the FOIA, and say, I want to see all communications where Hillary Clinton said the word Russia while she was Secretary of State. I want to see, you can think any possibility. We are entitled to have those. And what did she do? She just completely destroyed them. That is destruction of government property. And you're telling me that somehow they couldn't prosecute that, but Trump has, classified records, or he was disputing the election, the results of the election, which obviously Democrats, I'm sure every single one of your listeners knows, Democrats do that every single election. They refuse the outcome when they lose, at least. I mean, it's insane. And so I can't imagine that they actually have thought this through all the way.
Yeah, no, I don't think that they have. And that leads me to my next question, which is, let's say Trump wins the election. Let's say he wins the primary, wins the general, pardons himself, so he's free and clear in New York, in Washington, D.C., and in Florida, and anywhere else they decide to charge him with something between now and then. What should his attitude be? Should he go into these departments, go into the Department of Justice, go into the FBI, the CIA, all of these agencies, and say, okay, we're going to rein you in, we're going to eliminate all the politics, and we're going to make you go back to basics and perform the job that you're supposed to do and not all of this extracurricular activity? Or there's option B. You go in there and you just fill them with your political people and you weaponize them against your enemies, and it's payback time.
That's also you got some really good questions today, John. And I say that because they are good questions, but also they have been things I've been forced to think so hard about, and I have yet to come up with really good answers yet, because this one in particular today, I've been thinking about that. Whether he should, is the answer, well, once we get in, Trump, we're really going to stick it to you. I mean, honestly, I am high. It's not going to take much for me to feel like that is the route to go. And why do I say that? I say that because Democrats always escalate everything. Anytime they escalate and they're matched on it, I would say that, probably the earliest I remember this, at least as far as my adult lifetime goes, was Harry Reid, Democrat, getting rid of the filibuster for cabinet appointees. Okay, so then Republicans say, well, we're going to get rid of it for justices then, Supreme Court justices. And then obviously Democrats scream about that and say, well, that's not fair and you can't do that. Well, you escalated. You're just being met on the same turf. Okay, so they escalate every single time. It might be time to really turn the tables and escalate things on them so they really understand how it feels and what they're doing to this country, what they're doing to their fellow citizens. I don't think they view us really as the enemy here. Started this, and it may be very well time that they know how it feels. On the other hand, I would say there are many things in this country that still need to be addressed. We really need to fix this border issue. We need to end all this just bail everybody out. Everyone. That was 2020. That's now the expectation. There's a lot of problems that really need to be focused on. I think that so much of the country looks at all this political and legal drama and is just sick of it and tired of it. I will say there is a candidate. I don't think it's Trump. There is a candidate on the Republican side who I think is very well equipped to do both at the same time, to really show Democrats what it feels like to be on the other end, and also to address the concerns that I believe the vast majority of the country has.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that worries me is when these departments become politicized, and you can be politicized in any number of ways. You can be politicized in a partisan sense. You can certainly have your own agenda going after famous people because you're looking to be the lawyer that put famous person X or Y behind bars. some agenda that's other than, look, I'm just trying to enforce the law and make sure that people color inside the lines. And I remember having this discussion when Martha Stewart was put in prison. And boy, they went after her with both barrels, and they treated her like she was Jack the Ripper. And you read about what they went after her on, and you read about the details surrounding that case. And it was clear to me that it was just a prosecutor who wanted to make a name for himself. It was someone who thought that this was a career making case. Certainly would get you your name in all the papers. You could parlay it into a television job as a legal analyst, whatever the case may be. But they abused their power to get her. Because she was a bold faced name, man, they went after her with both barrels. I would argue that even Martin Shkreli was another one of these types where they treated them very differently. You could even say the Chrisleys, who are in jail now for 12 years for him and 7 years for the wife, the government went after them with a vendetta. When you take that attitude and you take those vendettas that they apply to celebrities or people they deem to be famous, and then you throw in an extra added political bias, man, that's dangerous. You're playing with fire.
Yeah, I think one the biggest point here is, and I used to hear about this when people on the right or conservatives talked about, the idea that you could take certain departments and agencies and sprinkle them throughout the country. Maybe the Justice Department can be in Oklahoma. Maybe, the EPA can be in South Dakota or Nevada. I always thought that was kind of a geeky, nerdy topic that I didn't really care about. But there's actually a lot to that, because what a lot of people do not understand is that these places are not stocked with just, you like to think of, as the media likes to refer to them, as just career public servants. They're not. They're all liberals. They're all left-wingers. And that is largely because of the geographical nature of Washington, D.C. And when I refer to Washington, D.C., I'm referring also to basically all of Maryland and all of Virginia, because they all live there. Barely any of them actually lives in D.C. I live in D.C., downtown D.C. They live out in northern Virginia, throughout Maryland, some of them as far as Baltimore. And it's just, they're all of the same people. If you go into any one of these places, I've known so many of them. I've known so many of these people that work at these places, work at the Pentagon. Every single one of them, liberal, votes Democrat. So that is a big problem. And if there's a way, in any way that you can somehow diversify the type of people that works in these places, and I think the surest way is to do it geographically. If there is someone who can make that work, that would be great. The other point is that there is so much incentive to go after Donald Trump, go after his supporters, because you have everything to gain and absolutely nothing to lose. I would look at it even in terms of the whistleblowers, for example. So look at the whistleblowers that came out under Trump. Those people became heroes, media opportunities, all kinds of financial gain from that. The Vindman, then I can't remember her name, but that New York Attorney General and the Attorney General of New York.
Letitia James.
The lady, but no. The one that came out and refused to resign, even though if they ask for your resignation, you're supposed to resign, but she didn't.
Oh, yes.
This was under Trump. I can't remember her name. But anyway, so, these people become authority figures, moral authority, authorities within their profession. Now, look at the whistleblowers that have come out now about the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden corruption scheme. These people, at best, they will be left alone and nothing will happen to them. At worst, they are going to have, right now, at this very moment, the New York Times and Washington Post, everybody is digging through their background, harassing, their families, I'm sure, are being called up by reporters just to find out what's the one thing they've done wrong in their life. Did they look at pornography or something like that? You're going to see profiles come out about that. Will be the worst that happens to them. That didn't happen with the Trump whistleblowers. No, those people become heroes, and at the worst that can possibly happen to them is everybody forgets about them. But no, by and large, they become heroes. So just all the incentive is on the side of going after the Trump people, going after the actual candidate, the former president. And just those are two of the biggest problems with having all this power concentrated in Washington.
Eddie Scarry, you can get his book, Liberal Misery, How the Hateful Left Sucks Joy Out of Everything and Everyone, Available online at Amazon.com. You can follow him on Twitter at eScarry. Eddie Scarry, thanks so much for stopping by on this Friday.
Thanks, John.
It's 2:25. Let's take a look at the roads. 30 on this Jimmy Buffett Friday on the John Phillips Show, Talk Radio 790 KABC. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And if you want to download the podcast edition of this show, just whip out your handy-dandy iPhone, find the podcast button, click on it, and then just type in the name of the show, The John Phillips Show. Click subscribe, and all of the podcasts will get downloaded to your phone automatically, and you can listen to us whenever your heart desires. All right, let's go ahead and make a couple of listeners very happy. AM 790 KABC welcomes Beck in Phoenix to the Kia Forum on August the 7th. Tickets are on sale right now at Ticketmaster.com. However, if you're caller number 9 at 888-790-5222, that's 888-790-5222, you'll win a pair of tickets to the show. All of this furnished by our friends at Live Nation. Good luck dialing. It's 2:31. That means it's time for headlines. It's 2:35 on the John Phillips Show on this Jimmy Buffett Friday, Talk Radio 790 KABC. Earlier in the week, I told you that a group of politicians here in the state of California, led by the state's Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis and LA County Supervisor Janice Hahn, they all signed a letter urging Taylor Swift to postpone her concerts in Los Angeles. She has 6 concerts at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood. They wanted her to cancel the concerts at the very last minute in solidarity with hotel workers who are on strike. They said if she performed, people would come into California from all over and they would stay in local hotels, and they want the hotels to feel the pain. So if she cancels her concert, people will cancel their plans to come to Los Angeles, and then the hotel workers will win. Well, Taylor Swift promptly ignored them and has successfully completed the first night of her concert series. At no point, I guarantee you this, did she ever consider delaying the concerts to keep these hacks happy. First of all, she doesn't care. Second of all, she's probably never even heard of them before. Third of all, I doubt she's reading the local California political papers and may not even know that they asked her to do it. But part of what happens with these people, and you see it happen all over. You see it happen in Sacramento. You see it happen at LA City Hall. You see it happen in county government, is this. In their little fiefdom, in their little world, everyone knows who they are and needs something from them. If you're an assemblyman, you're a senator, the lobbyists in Sacramento know who you are because they need you to vote for their legislation or kill legislation they don't like. So they keep an eye on the roster and they contribute to your campaign and they provide you with information. Maybe they provide you with support. Maybe they put pressure on you. Whatever the case may be, you're relevant to them in their world. Same thing is true for LA City Hall and LA County. But outside of that little world, you might as well be in the witness protection program. If you're Speaker of the California Assembly, that's a very powerful job. Very powerful job. If you're President Pro Tem of the Senate, that's a powerful job. I bet you if I were to go down to Venice Beach and I were to ask 100 random people who the Speaker of the California Assembly is and who the President Pro Tem of the Senate is, I would be surprised if more than 5 of them knew the answer. I just would. Nobody knows. They're totally anonymous. But because the people they surround themselves with all know who they are, they assume that everyone else does too. So Eleni Kounalakis, the lieutenant governor, regards herself as a mover and a shaker in California politics. In her mind, if she puts out a letter like this to someone like Taylor Swift would read it, she would consider it, she would get on the phone and call her, and they would have a meeting of the minds. And the lieutenant governor would likely get what she wanted. The fact that she was treated like a complete peon surprised no one but the lieutenant governor. First of all, no one can pronounce your name or spell your name. I'm sure when Taylor Swift saw the article in the news, if she saw it, she said, Eleni, what is this, an eye chart? I can't pronounce the name. Why should I pay attention to her? It's also a cheap way for these people to generate attention. And you see politicians doing these things all the time. They believe that if there's something going on with someone famous and they can somehow attach themselves to that famous person, they too will get some of the fame and notoriety. You saw this happen with Britney Spears. When Britney Spears got in trouble with the conservatorship issue, where her parents were taking more money than they should have, and people were taking advantage of Britney Spears right and left, and they abused the conservatorship laws. Man, those politicians stood in line to write legislation that would, quote unquote, correct that from happening. But what they were looking for is they were looking to become a part of the Britney Spears story. That way they'd be written about in People magazine and TMZ, and they'd be talked about on Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood, in places where a California state legislature would otherwise never get any attention. They're very good at doing those sorts of things. If you do engage in some celebrity drama, hoping to get fame as a result, you better make sure that you're going to successfully attach yourself to the story. If you do it the way that Eleni did it, and you're just ignored and treated like you're completely and totally irrelevant, I don't know if that helps your cause. The lieutenant governor in California has no power. In some states, they do. In some states, the lieutenant governor is essentially the person that leads the legislature. They pick which committees that you're on. They decide who gets to be on the juice committees and who gets sent to the basement. Those sorts of things. In California, the opposite is true. In California, the lieutenant governor has to do one thing every single day. They have to wake up, they have to put on their bathrobe, they have to open up their front door, they have to walk out to the end of their driveway, pick up the newspaper, and if the headline is anything other than the governor is dead, they get to go back to bed. And that is literally it. They really have no job duties. There's nothing that they're supposed to do other than take over if the governor rolls a 7 or is out of state. But that's it. She's rich. And I think part of what's going on here is her thinking like a rich person who happens to be a politician. Billionaires are used to getting what they want. And if they say they want something to happen, typically people pay attention. And I think a certain element of that was at play with her trying to inject herself into the story. But it didn't happen. Eleni Kounalakis also believes she's going to be the next governor of the state of California. And if you're going to be the governor of California, I guess one of the requirements is that you have to be a hypocrite. We saw Newsom do this when he shut down all the restaurants statewide, yet he was dining at the French Laundry with his lobbyist buddies. It's not okay for us to do, but it's perfectly fine for him to do. That's the way Newsom rolls. Guess where Eleni Kounalakis was the day before she came out with this letter urging Taylor Swift to cancel her concerts in Inglewood? she was at a concert in Santa Clara in Northern California where Taylor Swift performed. From her point of view, she already saw the concert. She already enjoyed the concert. She got what she needed out of the concert, and now no one else can enjoy the same thing that she enjoyed. That's her attitude. And if there is any aspect of Newsom's personality and his Achilles heel that will come back to haunt him, it's that exact attitude. Rules for thee, not for me. He did it during COVID. Barbara Ferrer did it during COVID. Sheila Kuehl, a.k.a. Louis Anderson, did it during COVID. And now Eleni Kounalakis is doing the same thing with Taylor Swift. Can you imagine how pissed off the Swifties would be if Taylor Swift actually took her up on it and canceled the concert when people have already bought their plane tickets, people have already reserved their hotel rooms? They probably, I don't know, got carpal tunnel calling Ticketmaster trying to get the tickets for this concert. It's a very hot ticket in town. Oh my God, the Swifties would be furious. Beyond furious. You know, when John Kerry ran for president, they came up with a new verb. They said that he got Swift boated because a lot of people who were on the Swift boats in Vietnam didn't like the fact that he campaigned against the war in Vietnam and threw the medals that belonged to other people at the White House and not his own. And so they went after him, and people say he got Swift boated. Well, if Eleni Kounalakis talked Taylor Swift into canceling her concert and all the Swifties got upset, then I think Eleni Kounalakis could get Swift boated too, because the Swifties would be after her in the next election. It's 2:46. That means it's time to take a look at the roads. It's 2:50 on the John Phillips Show, Talk Radio 790 KABC. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Just check the latest wires. The Mega Millions jackpot, which is going to be drawn, I believe, at 8 o'clock tonight, is now up to $1.35 billion, which means if you win the Mega Millions jackpot, you will be officially a billionaire, something apparently Dianne Feinstein's husband turned out not to be. And I often think, what would life be like if you woke up one morning and $1 billion was suddenly in your bank account? A lot of people that I talk to about this say the same thing, and that is that they would want to remain anonymous so that no one knew that they were the ones that won the jackpot. However, California law says if you win the jackpot, your name has to be published. They will put your name in the paper, and believe you me, everyone in your orbit, everyone that you work with, all your neighbors, all your friends, all your family, they would all be aware that you were the one with the $1 billion. And but trust me, if I had the option to win or not win, I would obviously take the money, because who would pass up on $1 billion? But can you imagine the problems that would begin almost immediately if suddenly you were worth that amount of money and everyone around you knew it? They would all want their cut. Every single person. People who deserve it, people who don't deserve it, whatever. And the sad part about it is, it almost doesn't even matter what you do. It's never going to be good enough, and you're going to be the jerk. If you bought your parents new homes and new cars, they could be happy, or they could say, now, wait a minute, you bought me a home in Temecula, and you bought me a SUV. Why didn't you buy me a home in Beverly Hills, and how come I'm not driving a Tesla? And instead of getting gratitude, what you end up with is a bunch of ingrates who are spending your money but from their point of view, not getting enough of a cut. I don't think you'd have very many people around you who you helped out who would be happy. I think that they would all assume that you're worth more money than you actually are, because you have to take half of it. You don't take the full sum if you get it all in one lump payment. And so because they assume that you're worth double what you're actually worth, they're going to think you're being cheap with them. And when people think that you're being cheap with them and that you have more money, it brings out very negative impulses. Winning the lottery would be a lot of fun. Having access to that amount of money would be a ton of fun. But putting up with all the BS associated with it, I'm sure all the winners could live without that. It's 2:53. This is Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's 2:58 on the John Phillips Show, Talk Radio 790 KABC. That's going to do it for this edition of Jimmy Buffett Friday. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you on Monday at noon right here on Talk Radio 790 KABC.